Okay, you saw how to save out JPEGs in the previous exercise, and you saw some of the settings that can be used when saving out JPEGs. Next up, we have GIF. And of course, it's my scientist that I want to save out as a GIF. Now, again, any graphic that is made up of solid blocks or solid areas of color is a fabulous candidate for the GIF file format. So think of things like cartoons or line drawings or even things like text or your company logo. That's another example. Any graphic that's, again, made up of solid blocks of color like this. Now, you might remember that I said that the GIF file format supports transparency, a brand of transparency called binary transparency. And again, what that means is solid edges of transparency, if that makes sense. Or maybe said a better way, pixels inside a GIF file are either 100% opaque or they're 100% transparent. They're either one or the other. They're on or off. Unlike PNG 24s, which support that alpha transparency, which we talked about, which is soft edge transparency or feathered transparency. That kind of stuff is not possible with the GIF file format. It simply doesn't support it, right? So what I'm going to do here is I want to set it up so that my scientist is going to be saved on a transparent background. Maybe I want the background of my website to show through in behind my scientist, right? So what I'm going to do over inside the layers palette is I'm going to turn off the visibility of the bottom layer, layer 2 there. That's a layer that's just filled with solid white. And now what I see is that checkerboard pattern there inside the background indicating transparency, right? All right, let's head to the Save for Web and Devices dialog box. So File and then down to Save for Web and Devices. And we're brought into the dialog box here. Now, I'm still in the 2-up tab. What's interesting about the Save for Web and Devices dialog box, by the way, is it remembers your settings from the previous use, right? So in other words, it remembers what you had used previously. So here on the left-hand side, I get the original in the 2-up. There's the transparency happening in there. And then over on the right, I get my optimized version. And I'm still set to JPEG, again, from the previous exercise. So any transparent areas inside my cartoon scientist are getting filled in with whatever's been specified in the matte option or the matte color there. So that's what's happening there. But of course, I don't want to save this guy out as a JPEG. I want to save him out as a GIF. So the first thing that I do, again, whenever I come into this dialog box, is I go and switch my file format. So I'm going to switch over to GIF. Okay, wonderful. Now I see the checkerboard pattern happening here in the right-hand side of the 2-up tab. Now I have transparency turned on here over on the right-hand side. If I turn transparency off, again, the transparent pixels have to be filled in with an opaque color, and that opaque color, again, is being controlled by the matte option that we see here now for the GIF options. But of course, I'm going to make sure that transparency is turned on. Now, the way that GIF reduces file size is completely different from how the JPEG file format reduces file size. With the JPEG file format, you saw that we had that compression slider. We were messing around with the different compression levels. I got mine all the way down to a compression level of 20, I think it was. Here with GIF, what GIF is going to do is pull color out of my image or out of my graphic to try and reduce the file size. So here I have a colors drop-down menu, and the GIF file format is going to support a maximum of 256 colors. So, you know, this is why a photo or some kind of a graphic that's made up of a lot of colors, millions of colors, really is not suitable for the GIF file format, because the GIF file format can only support a maximum of 256 colors. Not a lot of color. So, you know, I could say, all right, give me the works. Give me 256, and let me compare that to the original there on the left-hand side. And I go, you know what? That's pretty darn good. They're pretty darn close. It's not matching the color perfectly, but it looks fabulous, right? But then I look down towards the bottom and I go, oh, there's a cost to that. The price tag is $28.39K. And I go, geez, you know, that's a lot of file size. Maybe I could try pulling more color out without sacrificing too much quality. So then maybe I come back to colors and I go, all right, let's see how 4 looks. I'm going to drop it all the way down to 4. And I go, oh, geez, what a lot of damage it's done. It's reduced my file size all the way down to 8.7K. So in terms of file size, that's great. But it's just killed the color. It's totally pulled all the color out of my image. So that's no good. So maybe I'll try bringing that up to 8. And I go, well, it's still not good enough. We've lost a lot of color in the cartoon. Let's try bringing this up to maybe 16. I go, well, all right, that's not bad. That's better. It's still not perfect, but it's a lot better. And now my file size is up to 15.2K. So at this point, I have to make a decision. Okay, is it worth it losing some of the colors inside my cartoon to get a file size of 15.2K? I could bring this guy up maybe to 32, but it's going to cost me 2K or 2.5K, right? So it's up to you. You're going to have to decide, right? But in any regard, that's sort of the process of optimizing a GIF. We have a bunch of other options, by the way, additional options that I never bother with, but I'll run you through them anyway real quick here. This drop-down menu here, the color reduction algorithm drop-down menu, allows me to specify a color palette. And 9 times out of 10, I just leave the default. 9.5 times out of 10, I just leave the default. The default here for me is selective. I could go perceptual or adaptive, or I could force the operating system color palette, Windows or Mac if I wanted to. But again, normally I just leave the default there. I don't really mess with it. There's another option called dithering, and dithering is really quite terrible. What it is it's a method of giving the illusion of more color inside an image, which is really quite bad. Let me give you a quick example here. I'm going to go pattern, and then I'll try and reduce down the number of colors that I have here. See how you get this sort of this tiling pattern there, which is really quite it's quite 1995, isn't it? So anyway, I always go no dither. I don't bother with that at all. I also have web snap, so I can specify the percentage of colors which should be snapping to the web safe palette. And I also have lossy there as well. I usually don't bother with those guys. I'm going to leave those where they are. Below that, I get my color table. So these are all the colors, the 32 colors that are a part of my Cartoon Scientist. That's just fine. And of course, I also have the image size down there as well. I'm going to leave mine 360 pixels in width. That's just fine. And I'm going to go ahead and save this guy out. So go ahead and click on Save. And I'm going to save this guy out. Now he's being saved out as scientist2.gif. And of course, if you want to put optimized in front of that, that's just fine, as I did with the JPEG. I'm not going to bother on this one, but you certainly can if you want to. I'm just going to click on Save, and that's all there is to it. So there's a look at saving out your files as GIF.